All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to look at an ancient text that has a surprisingly modern message. It asks a really important question. What happens when a passionate fire of belief just starts to fade out? I mean, think about it for a second. Any great passion in your own life, maybe a new relationship, a cause you totally believed in, or a project you poured your heart into, it always starts with this incredible energy, right? This bright, roaring flame. You feel excitement, commitment, a real sense of purpose. It honestly feels like it could burn forever. But what happens when the heat starts to fade? When that thing you were so committed to becomes more of a routine than a real passion? You know, when you're just going through the motions and all you have left is the memory of how warm it used to be. It's something we've all felt. Well, believe it or not, this exact situation was playing out over 2,400 years ago, and it was addressed head-on by an ancient prophet named Malachi. To really get his message, though, we first have to understand who he was talking to. This timeline really tells the whole story. The people of Israel had been through this massive, collective trauma. They were exiled from their homeland. But then this miracle happens. They get to go back. They rebuild their most sacred site, the temple, with so much joy and gratitude. It's a fresh start, a real spiritual high. But you fast forward just a couple of generations to Malachi's time, and that fire, it's cooled way down into just apathy and indifference. They were still doing all the things, performing the rituals, following the traditions our grandparents had passed down. They had the form of faith, but the feeling, that deep personal connection, it was just gone. They could remember the fire, but they couldn't feel the warmth anymore. A Norwegian author, Ingvald Andre Korbo, has this really powerful name for this exact phenomenon in his study of Malachi. It's a name that perfectly captures this shift from a vibrant, real experience to just a hollow tradition. He calls them Vekkelsens barnebarn, which translates to the revival's grandchildren. Now, this isn't about people who totally reject their faith, not at all. It's about the people who inherit it, almost like a cultural hand-me-down, but without the personal life-changing experience that gave it all its meaning in the first place. The whole idea kind of breaks down into this three-stage process. First, you have the revival generation. These are the people who experience something real, something that changes them. Then, you get their children who are born into a world that's already been shaped by that revival. But by the time you get to the third generation, the grandchildren, well, the practices have become disconnected from the original passion. The why behind it all gets lost, and only the what is left. So what do you do when you see this happening? Malachi's approach wasn't some gentle sermon. No, it was a direct, dramatic, and really challenging wake-up call, and he structured it as a series of confrontations. The entire book of Malachi is literally built around 6 of these intense, back-and-forth arguments. 6 moments where God, speaking through the prophet, directly calls out the people's apathy and their totally skewed view of reality. And Malachi's method raises this huge question for all of us, right? How do you reignite a faded faith? And his answer seems to be, you don't ignore the difficult stuff. You confront it. You challenge all the comfortable assumptions and force a moment of real, honest reflection. This table here is basically a roadmap of the book. It shows you exactly where the people's faith had started to crumble. And look where it starts, with the very foundation, their doubts about God's love for them. From there, it moves through their religious duties, their faithfulness to each other, and their core beliefs about God's justice and character. These weren't just random arguments either. Each one hit on a specific doubt that was festering in the community. They felt unloved, their worship had gotten lazy, they were breaking their commitments to each other and to God, they were accusing God of being unfair, and in the end, they were basically wondering if any of it was even worth it. Malachi just held up a mirror to it all. And this is where we pivot from ancient history to our world, right now. The power of this idea, the revival's grandchildren, is that it's a mirror not just for them, but for us too. As Christian Lilheim says in the foreword to Korbo's book, the whole point of studying a text like this is to figure out, quote, how we can apply this message in our own time and culture. And that forces us to ask some pretty uncomfortable questions. So I guess I'll just leave you with this. In a world where so many of us inherit our traditions, our values, our institutions from the generations that came before us, are we just going through the motions? Do we remember hearing about the fire, but we've never actually felt the warmth? Are we, in our own way, the revival's grandchildren,